Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new, me answering questions about App Store optimization. That's hopefully kind of normal. Before we get started, as people shuffle in, let's do what we do traditionally. Tell me what's in your cup and where you're from. I'm drinking, what am I drinking? I'm drinking green tea. It's been a while since I drank black tea now that I'm thinking about it. Green tea in my Appfigures mug, which if you want to get too, I'll let you know a little bit later how to get it. And I'm in New York City, which is a little bit rainy this morning. Winter is kind of weird here. It was kind of warm last week and then became really cold. It's really odd. So tell me what you're drinking. Make sure you can write stuff in the chat because that's what we're going to be doing today. Kind of a different type of a live stream. So let's get the chat rolling and let's see what we got. Oh, Amsterdam is in the house. I see an emoji of coffee. At least that's what I think it is. Water in Germany. That's very healthy. Gotta stay hydrated. Munich, more Germany. Ooh, we got some people on LinkedIn. That's nice. We're streaming on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I mean Twitter. And also on YouTube. So if you're in any of those, good. I tried streaming on Twitch once. That didn't go as good as I expected. We had one viewer, and I think I know who it is. Maybe I'll do that in the future if I actually do Twitch. I make no promises. Ooh, cinnamon tea in LA. I like that. Black decaf in France. Wow, again, international audience. I really love that. Hello from Barcelona. Hello from New York City. So yeah, what's in your cup, where you're from, and soon we're going to get started. Today's live stream is interesting. I get asked a ton of questions, and I figured it would be nice if I actually answer them public in a way that more people can learn from them, or not just the one email or one DM or one tweet that I do at a time. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to ask questions and answer them. It's going to be nice. Hopefully you're bringing your good question. Please try to get me to not know what I'm talking about. I'm looking forward to that. And soon enough, if you follow me on Twitter, you might know this. I'm going to do the same thing for Apple search ads. I think that's going to be really cool too. But today is only ASO, App Store Optimization, organic. We're going to keep it light and interesting. So let's get started. What I want you to do is I want you to, in the chat, drop your questions. I already saw a few questions. I'm going to start with the common questions that I hear all the time. I don't know if many of you have it. Maybe you follow me a little bit more closely so you know the answers already. But I figured we'll start with the basics because I get these almost every day. And, you know, when it's every day, you know something needs to happen. So one of my favorites, well, not really my favorites, one of the most common ones that I get all the time is, how do I know if my ASO is working? And I think that's a really good question because it means you're trying. So how do you know if your App Store optimization is working? And there are really two methods. If you think about App Store optimization, the whole goal is to get more visibility. Of course, the goal is to get more downloads, but you can say that about pretty much everything marketing. So what you're really going for is, how do you increase visibility? And with visibility, you get downloads. But there's one little trick here. The trick here is that visibility has to be relevant. So you can't just increase visibility generically and hope for more downloads or expect more downloads. You can hope. But it's really all about being seen at the right place, kind of at the right time. So what I do is I look at three different things. The first thing that I look at when thinking about, is my ASO working, is, am I ranking in any relevant keywords? And you can use the app keywords tool that we have to see where you're ranked without having to track it or without having to tell us where you want to be seen. And that's a really good getting started point. I'll show you for a quick example. Let's go to my computer. And I have it on competitor keywords. Where's my mouse? My mouse is here. So let's go to app keywords and take a quick look at what it looks like. I'm doing all of this live, so if anything fails to load, that's real-time stuff for you. So what do we got? We got dark noise. Ooh, I don't know if Charlie is in the audience, but I know Charlie likes to talk about his app. So let's look at dark noise. If you don't know this app, this is a white noise maker machine. And I was on Charlie's podcast. Charlie's the guy who made it. He has a podcast. We talked about it kind of after the podcast, and I still have it open, clearly. So what you can see here is you can see all the keywords that the app is ranked for. And what do we got here? 705. So that's a good starting point. If you're now trying to optimize, working with 705 keywords is kind of nice. This means that the app is visible in 705 different kinds of searches. That's kind of incredible. But here's the thing. The thing is it actually visible or is it just ranking? You can rank in position 57. No one's going to see you because no one scrolls past maybe the third, maybe fourth result. And so we're looking at this, white noise, which is a pretty decently popular keyword, not very good. So if we're looking at is ASO working, the key is to look at however many keywords that you should be ranking for. If you're ranking for them, that's one. And then where you're ranking for them, that's two. Now, if you're not ranking at all, that's one thing. If you are ranking and it's kind of low, that's actually much better because it means the algorithm already decided that you are kind of allowed to be in the search results and you should actually be ranked. And so what you need to do here is apply more optimization, maybe more focus. There are a few different strategies, which I'm sure we'll get into in just a little bit. And that's how you make this rise. And then the last thing that I look at, and I mean, this is really simple, is I look at downloads. Ultimately, even though we're talking visibility, and between visibility and downloads, you still have another conversion, which is they have to see you and they have to want to download you. That's still what we want to accomplish. So we want to make sure that we are one, visible, two, or one, selected in the search results, two, show up in the right place in the search result, which is the top 5 results really as far as I'm concerned, and then that those that visibility is converting into downloads. There's a lot more in the middle if we want to get really, really picky. But for me, if you ask me if my ASO is working, those are the first 3 things I'm going to look at really quickly. And I do all of it off of this one report because that's really, really simple. So let's see. I was going to go through more questions, common questions that I get, but the chat is already kind of busy. So let me bring up a few questions on the screen and we'll go from there. Let's see. What do we got? Well, we have a bunch of good stuff. Let's see. Questions. Where are you, questions? Oof, where do I begin? Let's do a first come, first serve situation. Let's try this one. Where is my chat button? Chat is on the screen. Okay, cool. So Ben is asking. Let me see if I can get this here. Where is Ben? I have too many screens. That's what happens. Ben is asking, complex plurals, example given people and person, should avoid using both words to avoid the word getting duplicated. No. Well, fortunately, unfortunately, when it comes to pluralizing, the algorithm is not as smart as it looks. I don't know how smart you think it is, but it's not as smart. So it doesn't really know in most cases that a word is different if you have to think about it. If it's a simple matter of if you're a developer, imagine if you could write a regex to turn a plural into a singular and a singular into a plural, the algorithm is going to know that. Meaning if it's note and notes, that's fairly simple. That's built into a lot of text search engines. If you look at something like people and person, the algorithm for the most part doesn't really know how to do that. And I don't think Apple is trying to make it know how to do that. So ultimately, you should use both. The real thing is you should make sure that you're using the version that is more popular earlier in the name, subtitle, and the keyword list, and the version that is less popular, if you really want to use it, if it has any sort of popularity at all, you want to push it lower in this in the scheme. So maybe in the keyword list, or maybe at the end of the subtitle, really depending on the amount of popularity, the number that you see there. So that's where I would go with this. It is not duplication. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is really common. Question for Macham. After updating your title, subtitle, and keywords, how immediate, and I imagine the question is, how immediately do you see results? So this I get all the time. I get even more than the question I got before about how to know when your ASO is working. And every time the answer is kind of the same. It usually takes about a week, sometimes 2 weeks on the App Store. Google Play is a little bit slower, so I'd aim for like 2 to 3 weeks. But here's the catch. It's very possible that you're going to see a very big difference in keyword ranks almost immediately, meaning within a few hours. We do tracking on an hourly basis, and I see this all the time. In some cases, it will stick. In some cases, it will not stick. And that's really the key. So it doesn't happen all the time, and it really depends on who you're competing with. If you're going into a keyword that's extremely competitive, you're not going to see this. If you're going to a keyword that may not be as competitive, but could still be very popular, meaning that maybe not enough apps are actually targeting directly. I call those opportunities. Or maybe something else is going on. You might see an immediate change. Maybe you're going to see a rank going from 100 to 20 or from 50 to 7, something along those lines. The key is, and that's really the crux of all of this, is if that happens, it doesn't mean that it's going to stick. The algorithm, especially on the Apple side, tries different things all the time. And I know this sounds kind of weird because you think the Apple algorithm is kind of basic. And for the most part, it's a little bit more basic than Google, but it still tries. And I think that's really cool. I think that rolled out a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit more. So what it will do is it will see those changes. The changes will work, meaning they will have the right keyword in the right place for this specific keyword set or competitor set. And what would happen is it will say, what happens if I lift it up? Will it get enough popularity on its own to stay up? If you do, and by that I mean if you get enough ratings, because you're getting more visibility, you should be getting more downloads, and those downloads should be converting into more ratings. If that happens, you're going to stay up. If that doesn't happen, you're probably going to start sliding down a little bit slower than the rise. But eventually, if that drops, it's possible that you'll drop just a handful of spaces. So maybe from 7 to 10, it's also possible you'll drop back to a half of where you were before. So if you drop from 50 to 7, you might land back in the 30s or something like that. That's not bad. That's actually, all those are good results. It just means you have to do more. You have to do more in order to make sure that you stay where the algorithm thinks you should be. So you should help the algorithm think where you should be. Hopefully that answered the question. That was a very long answer for a very short question. Okay, a question from Thibault. So, the best way to rack in new ratings for a brand new app? That's a very common question as well. So, if you have a new app, you're kind of in this weird situation where I keep saying that ratings, the new ratings that come in, are the currency of ASO. So, if you have a brand new app and you don't have a user base, how do you get those ratings? Now, there are a bunch of different ways, and now we're talking just regular marketing, because what you need to do is you need to get downloads. And there are, I think I wrote a guide with 13 ways that are not ASO to get downloads for no money. I would use all of those ways. Promote your app, make sure that everyone knows about it, pitch it to anyone you can, put it in all the places where it's relevant, whether it's a subreddit or on Twitter or on LinkedIn. But here's the key. There are a lot of keys today. The key is make sure that your app is really, really, really optimized to convert a download into a rating. And I don't mean popping up the ratings pop up as soon as someone opens the app. I think that's terrible. I mean, figure out the right place, the best place for someone to leave a rating, the happy moment, as some may call it. And this is really a creative aspect of building. You have to find that place where people will leave a rating. And sometimes it's about being more aggressive. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time. Make sure you have that before you do anything else, before you even launch, in my opinion. If you do that and you do that well, and you have all of your keywords set up properly, meaning you're going after keywords that you know you can get, not crazy generic terms that have a popularity of 90 and require tens of thousands of new ratings, but maybe start with smaller keywords, then use all of those marketing tools that are either free or are really just labor of love, and make sure that you get as much visibility as you can outside of the App Store, and hope that that visibility will turn into downloads. You can also use Apple Search Ads. Apple Search Ads are really, really simple, and they're very different than something like Google Ads or Facebook Ads or Instagram Ads, because they're right there. They're kind of the equivalent to App Store optimization, except you just tell it what you want as opposed to optimize and hope for what you want. But the key is, again, make sure that your keywords are good, so as you start climbing up, thanks to the downloads, thanks to the ratings, you'll be able to use all of that good juju and also make sure that you're optimizing for those ratings. That's really the key. So keep that in mind. All right, what do we got next? Do the amount of the latest new ratings is still boosting the ranking compared to the last month? I'm not sure I totally understand it, but I will try. The answer is not exactly. It's not really a relative metric for you, meaning if you increased your ratings in the last 30 days versus 30 days ago by 1,000%, the algorithm is not going to care. What the algorithm does care about is the absolute number of new ratings in the last 30 days. And it compares that to the competitors. So if I'm app A and I'm getting 1,000 new ratings, and you're app B and you're getting 500 ratings in the last 30 days. It doesn't matter if you went from 0 to 500 and I went from 900 to 1,000. I'm still going to outrank you as long as my keywords are optimized very well. So it doesn't really matter. The change doesn't matter in the case of ratings. The algorithm doesn't really follow apps that way. It looks at snapshots in time. And that's why when Apple sweeps ratings or when something big happens, you don't really see any sort of difference. There's no impact if the past changes. And that's how I know this is the case. All right, more questions. So Ben is asking, similar question, is it risky to use similar words such as photo, picture, and image? And the answer is the same. No, it's from everything I've seen, they're all totally separate. And so all you really have to do is make sure that you're using the right version. And the right version is the version that has more popularity, or the version that is more of an opportunity, or the version that you can actually target given your 30-day ratings. Well, we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to go through them a little bit quicker. What is a good, okay, and bad download to rating ratio? I get 3 times more subscribers than ratings. That's probably bad. So, well, Ben asked a lot of questions. Thank you for all the good questions, Ben. Hopefully you're getting good answers. So let's see. If you are, what is a good DPR? So DPR is a metric that I started using a couple of years ago, and the idea was if you know that ratings are the currency of the App Store, and ratings are the currency of App Store optimization, you really want to have more, you want to be able to generate more than the competition for the same number of downloads, because then it's kind of like fishing with, what is this saying? Fishing with a shotgun? Maybe. Fishing with explosives? I don't know. If you know what it is, drop it in the comments and I'll get to it. But it's kind of like that. So if I know that for every 10 downloads that I get, or that I need 10 downloads in order to get a rating, and you know that you need 100 downloads to get a rating, and we both start from scratch, 0, I know that it's going to be a lot easier for me to get to 1,000 ratings than it's going to be for you. And even if we spend money on advertising, we're going to have to spend totally different amounts, 10x the amount, and we're competitors, so I imagine that it's going to be the same cost. I don't really know what a good DPR is. Ideally, the lower the better. If it's a 1-to-1 ratio, that's amazing. That never happens, especially not at scale. So really, it's all about the competition. If you go into Keyword Inspector and you look at the DPR of competitors, let's do that very quickly. I'll show you what I mean. So this is the DPR. Let's get this off for a quick second. Oops. Where is my screen? My screen disappeared. So let's see. We'll go into Keyword Inspector, which is my favorite tool. I think if you read anything, you know that. And let's look for a simple keyword. Let's look for white noise. We're on that, so might as well. And so it's a very high popularity keyword that's kind of competitive. There are a bunch of results. We're getting some data in real time to make sure that it's all up to date. And here's an interesting bit. So white noise has a DPR of 16, which disappeared. Come back, DPR. I need you. Okay, here we go. So a DPR of 16 for the first one, which means that it takes 16 downloads to get a single rating, which is actually kind of good if you think about it. Below it has a 20. So for every 20 downloads, they get 1 rating. So they're already a little bit slower, especially if you think about it at scale. And then as you edge down, you see 8. And 8 is beating it because with its 8, it can get ratings much more quickly. So the reason why this app, which is currently number 3, it's not number 1, even though it has more ratings, has nothing to do with the DPR or the ratings. It does with how the keywords are laid out. So that's really what it is. But it takes this app twice as fast, or half the number of downloads, to get new ratings as the number 1 app. So if this app changed its name and subtitle a little bit, it could actually be getting a lot more downloads, which will kind of not exponentially, but doubly increase its ratings, which will also cement its place as number 1. So it's less about the number. The number is the lower, the better. But it's more about what your competition is doing. So if you have a competitor that's got 100, you know, you're really doing well because you have a lot of flexibility. But if you have a competitor, if your competitors are in the teens or in the single digits, it means you really have to optimize that and make sure that you get it to be what it's supposed to be, and that is lower than the competition. Now, if you get to a situation where all of the competitors are kind of the same, let's say you're all 3s or 4s, that's great. It means there's not much more to optimize, but I have not seen that for apps that are getting thousands of downloads. maybe in the tens, maybe in the hundreds, but not really thousands. Alrighty, so let's move on. Oh no, we have so many comments. My comment thing stopped working for a moment, but let's get back to it. So, kind of a longer question. Our app has been around since 2019. That's cool. And we're a part of App Store Founders Program as well. We've been featured multiple times, but it feels like our organic is stagnant. Strategies for older apps. And this is interesting. I've been asked about older apps over the last few weeks quite a few times. I'm not sure if anything happened or if there was an article maybe that triggered all of this, but there really isn't much that's different for older apps than newer apps. The problem with older apps is back in the day, well, I mean, 2019 is not back in the day, but it's long enough ago that it was that some apps kind of got stuck in specific keywords. And so developers that didn't really try got the hang of ASO, or, well, rode the wave of ASO kind of accidentally, by mistake, by sheer luck. And many of those developers are now realizing that it's getting more competitive because ASO used to be a nice to have in 2019, 2020, maybe 2021. But 2022 and on, it's become a necessity. Almost every keyword that I see, you have at least 2 or 3 apps that are trying really hard, which was not the case back 4 or 5 years ago. So at this point, it's really about you have to play the game. You have to find the right keywords. You have to make sure you have those ratings. You have to come out with updates to keep on iterating and making sure that you're targeting the right keywords. And you kind of have to follow the algorithm rules. Use the keywords properly. Use them in the name. Use them in the subtitle. Use them in the keyword list. Make sure everything is right. And the same for Google. On the Google side, you will see this too. Google's a little bit different, and the way Google indexes relies more on words in the long description, in the short description, but ultimately it's kind of the same. Google doesn't really, and Apple doesn't really want to give you old news. They want to give you new news. So as long as you keep up with them, it doesn't really matter if your app is 2 years old, 7 years old, or really a week old. And if it's a week old, you're getting a boost. So let's not worry about being a week old. Okay, next. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. I'll eventually get to as many questions as I can. And if you're enjoying this, give me a like. I do like to see the likes. And in the live stream, we actually asked for likes twice, and we have the most likes on, I think, any live stream. So we're going to try and beat that because we have to show Steve that he has to do it again. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you didn't see the last live stream, Steve Piang and we talked about App Store optimization, and we talked about different strategies. Steve brought a bunch of actual experience and experiments that he ran, which were really eye-opening. I answered a bunch of questions, and it was one of my favorite streams. I'll leave a link to it later so you can watch it when this is done if you want to learn more about ASO and get this sort of hands-on experience as opposed to just, I don't know, more high-level stuff. I try not to do the more fluffy stuff that teaches. I try to give you my experience, which I think is a lot better. Okay, so let's continue. Utkaresh says, hi, Ariel. Hello. We are a 10 million plus download app with 4L reviews. We have rating of 4.7. However, we get only 1-star reviews and relevant reviews in both stores. Can you help with this? I'm not entirely sure what the question means. If you're getting 1-star reviews, but a 4.7 rating, something is odd. If this is on Google Play, so Google Play has this little quirk, and I call this a quirk, but it's really just poor design. Google Play uses keywords in the reviews in order to rank your app, which is totally bad, and I'll show you why. I'll tell you why. Because anyone can buy just bad fake reviews for your app, and I've seen this happen on too many apps where a competitor wanted to bring down an app, so they just went out and bought a bunch of bad reviews. They messed up the keywords. They put 1-star reviews on it. Now, I don't know if that's the case here, because if your ratings are coming from your app, it means users like your ratings, and most users don't leave a review. They just leave a rating. But if you have a bunch of 1-star reviews, maybe that's what's happening. I'm just guessing. I would say look into it and see if there's anything there that kind of feels odd. Cleaning that up is a huge pain. And so you have to go to Google and you have to report every review, and it takes forever, but at least you know what it is, and then you can go with it. I don't know if that's the case. I would start by looking at that. That would be what I do. Okay, next. Adrian is asking, should I put my main 3 to 5 keywords in the title, subtitle of all 9 US localizations? Yes and no and maybe. So This is a good question. It's a good question because there are a lot of people who don't know that Apple now indexes 9 or 10 different languages in addition to English in the US, which means that you can put keywords in English and in French and in a whole bunch of other languages. I have a guide that has the list of all of them, and I'll link to it later. But it all works in the US, which means you have 10 opportunities or 10 different sets of keywords. It's not like you have 1,000 keywords now, but you have 10 sets of 100. Now, the question from Adrian is, should I put my main 3 to 5 keywords across all of them? And the answer is kind of maybe. It really, really depends on the app. There are apps that are very focused, and so you don't have that many keywords to target, and then you should include the important ones because they become the stem of long tail keywords. Meaning if you have a 2-word keyword or a 3-word keyword, and they all kind of start with the same base, then yes, you would want to have them and try different sets that are slightly different across the localizations. That's what I would do if my app only had 2 to 3 or 3 to 5 main primary keywords. If you have anything more than that, I maybe would focus 2, maybe 3 localizations on it, depending on how you've done your research and how many keywords you have that would kind of fit, and then use the other localizations for totally off-the-wall experiments. At least 2 localizations for totally crazy, dumb, wild experiments, because out of 9 or 10 possibilities, giving 2 to just random ideas is perfect. If you win, perfect, you can bring that into one of your main localizations, and if you don't, you can throw it away and start over. So that's what I would do, but again, it really depends on how many keywords your app can actually target. What else do we have? The keywords thing broke again. Come on, keywords thing. I mean, comment thing. If not, I'm just going to have to read them. That's going to be great. All right, technical difficulties. We're working on this. When I'm saying we, I mean me. Aha, we got this to work. Don't right-click on the thing that shows the chat. Lesson learned. Okay, so Mika, or Micah, I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Maybe let me know in the comments. I was asking, any tips for choosing an app name? I think you suggested starting with a significant keyword. Is it better to create a unique name plus keyword instead of just using a keyword? So yes, that is my suggestion. And to me, that's the best. I think when people come into the App Store, just from the people standpoint, not even the algorithm, you want to tell them what the app does. They rarely care about your brand name, with a few exceptions. If you're Airbnb, they're coming for Airbnb. They're not coming for apartment rentals. But for pretty much everything else, they're coming for whatever the something else is. If they're coming for a white noise machine, like the case we had before, they're not coming necessarily for dark noise. They're coming for anything that will just play sounds. Maybe it's to calm down a baby or something like that. They have an intent. They have a thing that they need. They just need it. So to me, that's kind of a good sales way to do your app, to do your app's name. Now, the algorithm kind of agrees because it reads from left to right in English. And so whatever's on the left side of the name gets the most juju from the algorithm, and then it cascades down. And so if you want your app to be visible, especially if you don't have a brand like Airbnb or Uber or one of those, put the intent, put the keywords that signify what the app does first, and then put a name. I do think every app needs to have something unique, because if I want to tell my friends about this cool white noise app that I found, what am I going to call it? I'm just not just going to say go search for white noise in the App Store, because if I do, it may not be your app as a developer, and you want to make sure that I give you that you can consistently be found. So white noise is just a thing that I want to do, but let's say dark noise is the name of the app, and I want dark noise to be the thing that I remember. So I want both. That's how I would approach this, and I think that's the best way to do it. And it also gives you a lot of flexibility because you can choose both keywords and a name. And if you do this before you come up with a name, you're not going to run into a situation where, just in the case of white noise and dark noise, you would have to repeat noise if you want to make it look really good. And you probably don't have to, but it's going to get really complicated. Save yourself time. Just do it ahead of time. All right, next. Tomislav is asking, the publication of a new app name and the selection of first keywords is an interesting topic. I'm interested in your thoughts on how to do ASO day one. So, okay, this is a good one. I wish I would get this question more often. This is the kind of question I want to be a common question. So ASO in day one is actually ASO in day like -30, however long it takes you to develop the app. I think that your launch strategy should revolve not exactly around what you built, but what you built should revolve around your launch strategy, which might sound crazy to those of you who don't do marketing. But if you think about it, so you're building an app for the most part to solve a need. You're not really building it because you just want to build a white noise machine and you don't care if anyone downloads it. You see the need for a white noise machine and you want to build a white noise machine that would fulfill that need and get downloads in the process. Or at least I hope that's what you want to do. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. I think games are a little bit different in the sense that some people want to build games. And I know because in what feels like a past life, I ran a game studio and me and my brother built games, and games are more, I want to build this game. I'll worry about everything else later. But that's a different question. So if we're focusing on apps that do have an intent, a very clear intent, and you're not building them because you just want to have fun, I would start before even developing and say, what would it look like on day one? What are people going to look for? How are they going to find me? And there's a little thing that a lot of people don't know. In the first 7 days on the App Store specifically, you get shown in the autocomplete of search results, regardless of how many ratings you have or anything else, just because it's your first week in the App Store. Now, it gets a little bit tricky because the algorithm tries to associate you with keywords that are relevant. And so someone would search for a relevant keyword, and your app by app name would show up in the autocomplete, which is really, really cool. It's a really great way to kickstart any sort of ASO campaign, or really any sort of campaign. And so before you start developing, think about all these things. Put together the right keywords, the right name, the right subtitle. Do all of this before you even start developing, and develop around that. It's going to mean that your features are going to be aligned with your keywords, and your keywords are really intent-based, so your features are going to be aligned with your users. And if you don't know your users, you have to figure that out before you actually start building the app, because you might be building the wrong features. I have a guide on that too. And a very easy way to do that is if you look at your closest competitors using a tool like Keyword Inspector, very quickly put in the keyword that you think you'll be attracting the most downloads with and see who's competing. Then look at their keywords and see what they're going after. And that should get the ideas going. Craft your own. And once you have that, your day one launch is going to be already done. That's how I would do it. Muchum said, thank you. You're welcome. Robotech, ooh, that's cool, is saying, so if we change the keywords and the description and we don't see results because of keywords, how much should we stick with the keyword and description? Google don't like changing description all the time. It's very, very true. So Google's a little bit of a different beast, especially around the description. And the reasoning is on Google Play, Google actually indexes the entire description, so reads it, and it looks for things that are a little bit different than what it does in the name and the short description, which is kind of like the equivalent of the subtitle on the App Store. And that's because it's looking for repetition. It's actually looking for repetition. It's the only place where you must repeat things, but it's also reading sentence structures. Google is very complex, obviously, for all the reasons. And so if you keep updating it, you're not going to give the algorithm enough time to actually really understand your description. These things don't happen like this, even though you want them to, especially for apps that are not getting millions of downloads. They're getting a little bit of a better treatment, which is the same on YouTube. When your videos have millions of views, you get more visibility. When they don't, you have to work up to it. And so if you didn't already, you should give this video a like. But Google Play is kind of similar. Now, it's tough to say for a single keyword if it's working or not. What's easier to say is if a set of keywords is working. It's possible that you're aiming for combinations that are just too tough, but one of those keywords might be good. So what I would do is think about the keywords as a set. It's a set that combines the name, the short description, and the long description. And specifically in the long description, we're looking for keyword density. And so let me give you an example of what that looks like. If we go into the keyword density tool, keyword density is here, you'll see that even though out of a very long description, it's really just a handful of keywords that the algorithm sees. Everything else is kind of fluff as far as it's concerned. So let's look for Dark Noise is an iOS-only app. I need to come up with a quick, let's look for something like Bumble. I don't know if that's a good idea, but let's see. And this will highlight all the keywords that the algorithm sees. So this is a description coming directly out of Google Play. And you see that here, we don't have that many keywords. I mean, we do in the case of Bumble, but for the most part, most apps are not going to see this. And even look at the repetition and the density. In order to have density that the Google Play algorithm sees, you need to be in the 3 to 5% range in from everything that I've seen. Maybe a little bit lower is still okay, so maybe 2%. And 5 is kind of high. That's where I would put my max. But really, anything below is kind of invisible. So even though we see a bunch of keywords here, they are repeated, but not enough because it's a very long description, almost 4,000 characters out of what's allowed. So this is a good way to think about your description. Your description is not really the entire 4,000 or whatever characters. It's really just the keywords that have a popular or a density of more than 2%. So in this case, not really that many. Dating and Bumble, which is kind of surprising considering it's Bumble. But at the same time, dating is a very tough category, both on the App Store and on Google Play. So I'm not surprised this has not been fully optimized just yet. But when it comes to keyword sets, always make sure that you think of keywords as a set and make sure that you use them the right way. Let's see what else we have. I keep losing my mouse. Does running Apple search ad campaigns helps on ASO? So this is not a question I get. This is just a statement that people make, and I'm not sure why. The answer is no. Apple search ads does not directly contribute to your App Store optimization. Some people say that I'm wrong about this. Show me results. I've seen so many results, and I've written about them in all of my newsletters, especially This Week in Apps, showing how apps that are using Apple search ads are not getting ahead. But ultimately, it's a yes and a no and a maybe. The yes is rolling back to one of the questions that I answered just a little bit time ago. If you are getting downloads and you've optimized your app to get those downloads and transform them into ratings, downloads are downloads. It doesn't matter where they come from. More ratings is more better for ASO, and you want to bring that up. And so, yes, Apple search ads, when done properly, can definitely help you. But if you don't have your ratings optimized, your ratings pop up, and you don't do, and your keywords are not optimized for Apple, for search engine, for App Store optimization, I'm going to drink some tea. So as long as everything is optimized, those downloads would convert into, will increase your rank. But if they're not, it's really not going to make a dent in anything you do. But there's also a maybe, and the maybe is a negative. With Apple specifically, there's this thing of relevance. And if your keywords are irrelevant, what's going to happen is you're going to get people to your page. And let's say you run an Apple search ads campaign and you forgot to uncheck the smart match and you forgot to uncheck broad match because you didn't see my live stream on how to do those and how to save some money, which I will also link to. And let's say now the algorithm is giving you visibility, or putting you in front of users that don't exactly need your app. What's going to happen is the users are going to see your app thinking that it will do whatever they need to do. Go into the apps page, see that it doesn't do what they need to do, and back out and go look for another app that will solve the problem. That whole interaction is actually negative as far as the algorithm is concerned, because it's thinking to itself, someone is seeing this app and deciding not to download it probably means it's irrelevant for this particular app. So it's actually pushing you down. And as that happens across some more keywords, you're actually going to get pushed down. That is even true for keywords that are similar but not exactly to your keyword list. And so there is this side effect. It doesn't happen all the time, and I would say don't worry about it too much, because ultimately you have to uncheck smart match. You have to make sure you don't do broad match. Those are just evil, and I hope Apple will have a disable all the things Arial hates button in the future. If not, maybe I'll just write a Chrome extension to do that, or a Safari extension. But as long as you do those right, you'll be fine. And that's how I would approach that. Okay, next. Espresso quotes and saying try on iOS and Android. I'm not entirely sure what this question is, so I'm going to move on. Emrith is asking, occasionally we see a random but significant bump in downloads coming from institutional purchases, and Apple doesn't show any info. Forums say they leave fake reviews that affect you. Thoughts? I have not actually heard the fake reviews side of things ever. It's possible I was not in the right forum. So if you have a link to that thread, I would love to read it. Drop it in the comments. But institutional purchases are purchases from big companies. They have a business institutional and an educational institutional. And you'll see that in your analytics charts as kind of like 10,000 apps or 5,000 apps. They're always round numbers. They're always massive. And what those mean is that some admin in some company just decided to download it for all of their devices and using MDM, push it into all the devices. I don't know that it has any impact on anything, or I do know that it doesn't have any impact on specifically on ASO, because it doesn't kind of go through the App Store and it doesn't go through the regular chain of how things proceed. But again, I've never heard this theory about fake reviews. So if you have more details on that, I would love to see them. Okay, next. SK is asking how to stand out from competitors when everyone is using the same keywords. That's a tough one. You shouldn't. I think that's the real case. So dating, for example, which is an area I looked at for a few different companies over the last few years, is really, really, really tough because everyone copied and pasted whoever started the trend. It doesn't really matter who started, and it doesn't really matter who's changing the trend. All the other competitors are just going to do the same. Tinder is going to do what Bumble does, or the other way around, and all the other ones are just going to copy and paste it. And everything gets extremely nuanced. One of the things that is most important in that case is conversion rate, which means the number of people who saw the app in search results, clicked on it, and then downloaded. We don't have ways to estimate it yet because it's really, really tough, but we're working on something that will allow us to map that interaction. And once we do, it'll be a lot easier. And then you would know what to do. You would know who to look after. So one competitor is probably doing an amazing job with their screenshots or maybe their video, depending on what it is. Videos don't always work, but in the case they do, that could be it. And so you have a lot of on-page ways to improve that conversion rate, and that's usually how you climb up. Ratings are also another way to do it. And when all the apps are exactly identical, the same as far as keywords, you want to have a nice cushion when it comes to ratings. So if your nearest competitor is at 1,000, you don't want to be at a 1,500. You want to be at 3,000 or 4,000 if we can. And I know that's kind of tough. It's not always easy, but that's kind of the idea. So you want to be leaps ahead in the numbers that are quantifiable, and then make sure that you optimize your on-page to get that impression to download rate as quickly as possible and as high as possible. And that's usually how you would optimize in a case where everything is kind of identical. Now, it doesn't happen in most keywords because most apps don't copy and paste, but there are a handful of apps that do, or a handful of intents of keyword sets that do. Okay, next. Search ads. Can we get me higher in competitive keywords? We answer that. So the answer is not really, but if you are using them properly, make sure that you are optimizing your ratings, and that's pretty much it. And optimizing your keywords, that's not pretty much it. So make sure you're good for ASO, and everything else will follow. Next question from Adrian. Will Apple allow me to offer a bonus feature in my app, which is linked to app review pop-up? I incentivize users to leave ratings reviews. Absolutely not. If you get caught, they're going to be really, really pissed off. It's against the terms. Now, there is an interesting thing that I saw at a conference, an ASO conference a few years ago. A company with a game, what they were doing is they were incentivizing before showing the pop-up without saying that if you do this thing for me, you will get a thing. They just gave you a thing. I think it was some coins or something like that, or maybe a bonus feature. And then immediately after said, would you like to rate the app? And so even though it didn't associate it, which is okay with the terms of Apple, users still felt like one kind of required the other, or maybe they felt good about it enough and ratings went through the roof. So you cannot incentivize users. You can't say, if you rate this app, you will get a coin, but you can give them coins and then say, can you rate the app? That's such a smart way to do it. I forgot who came up with it, but it was such a smart way to do it, and I really think it's how to do it right. All right, next. Ooh, message retracted. Okay. If you have improved your 30-day new ratings, should you remove keywords and then add them back to try and rank higher for them? From Owen. No, you shouldn't. The algorithm is smart enough, and it will figure out everything it needs to on its own. You don't have to make any sort of change to keywords. All you have to do is make sure that you make changes to ratings. Now, if you remember when we started, we talked about if the algorithm sees you in a keyword, that's already great, because as the ratings change, you will most likely go up. If the algorithm does not see you in a specific keyword, even if your ratings do change, that means that you have to rethink the keywords. Maybe you have to shuffle them around a little bit. Maybe you have to focus them a little bit, but something has to be done. So if that's the case, that's what I would do. Okay, next. Isaac saying, hi, Ariel. Hello. How positive are you that new ratings in the last 30 days are the definitive determinant for ranking? Surely metrics such as downloads or revenue are correlated to number of ratings. So that, unfortunately, I do get asked a lot of times, and sometimes it's when people just simply don't believe me. But if you read my keyword teardowns, and I've done more than 100 of them, you can see a very consistent trend. And so it's not the only thing, which I've said before, but it's a very, very, very important thing because there are two things for the algorithm to do. One, it needs to identify who should be in the search results. And the second thing is identify how to sort it. And if you think about it like a developer, you need something quantifiable to rank them, to sort them. You need something a little bit more open-ended in order to discover them. And that's really what the algorithm does. So the ratings are the quantifiable side of things, and it's about 30 days. I'm sure that it's probably a little bit different. Maybe it's 17 days or 20 days or 19 days. Maybe Apple's messing around with it, but in all of my searches, 30 days was the right average. It gave me the most predictable way to see ratings. Now, downloads are not taken into consideration. I've debunked that a million times, or more than 100 times, I would say. And revenue is definitely not, because what do you do with apps that don't have any revenue? Do they leave the rankings? And the answer is no. Now, this is the same for paid apps and for free apps, which is why you don't see a lot of paid apps for most of the relevant search results. They just don't get as many downloads, which convert into ratings. So if you see a paid app in search results, it pretty much means that they have enough ratings to compete with the free apps. That's rarely the case. Fortunately, unfortunately, depends how you look at it. Shooting fish in a barrel. That's what I was thinking about. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, continuing. Okay, so SK is asking a question that I just answered. How to stand out from competitors when everyone is using the same ASO technique? And the answer is, we went through that. Okay, next. And Kid is asking, how reliable is the Appfigures keyword score? It depends which score you're talking about. So popularity comes directly from Apple. The competitiveness is an algorithm that we invented, and we look at various different areas that we believe are what makes it or breaks it for most apps that are trying to compete. If you have any more specific question, send it my way. Wait, I skipped one. Amrit is asking, can ASO be influenced by external factors such as influencer marketing, TikToks going viral? Absolutely. Just 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I wrote an article about a coloring book. My coloring book free that just blew up on TikTok. And because of that, became the #1 result for coloring book searches. And this goes back to pretty much everything I've said up until now. Search ads, paid marketing, unpaid marketing, downloads, ratings, success. So yes, absolutely. Make sure that you are optimizing to get more ratings. That's really the key. Okay, more. I want to develop a new game for App Store. I don't care the type of game. How could I use your platform to find the less competitive space? Thanks. Ooh, an interesting question. So this I actually get asked fairly often, and we have a few tools that do this. The real question is not more about what you want to build, because you know that you want to build something that will succeed more so than something that you care specifically about, and more about what is the competition like. So what I like to do, let me bring my computer back. So what I like to do is I like to start with Explorer. I don't know how many of you use Explorer, and Explorer, there is a free version of Explorer. And in Explorer, what you can do is you can search for pretty much everything. Now, your view is going to be different, depends on how much access you have to this, but there is a free version of this. And there's going to be a slightly less free, but more better version coming soon. And what I would do is I would go with, let's say, iOS App Store. And let's go with games. And so what Explorer does, in case you have not used it before, it's a big search engine that has all the apps and a bunch of filters. That's the easiest way to look at it. And so what I just looked for was iOS App Store. So only, we do a whole bunch of stores, CTV, desktop, and of course, Apple and Google and Amazon and Microsoft and all those. And I looked only for games. So there are 220,000 games currently on the App Store. And what I like to do is I'm going to add a field to this. And the field is going to be the primary category. Oops, the main category. And here at a glance, you can see where all the games are. Oh no, wait, yes. So some games actually end up also in the entertainment category. It's kind of funny. Let's add all categories to this and see what it looks like. Categories already here. Oh, that's why this is not what I'm looking for. So here you have all the categories. Try to stay away from the categories that have a lot of apps in them. That's a good starting point. That's what I would do. And then once you narrow it down, so let's say we want to go for role-playing games. Let's just say we'll go here. We'll swing this back. And then role-playing. And now you can start. Wait, I need to remove games. And now you can really start to zoom in and say, okay, within role-playing, what works and what doesn't. Now, this will probably require a higher tier plan, but you can go in and you can say, I only want to find games that are getting at least 1,000 downloads a month, because you want to make sure that you build for something that can actually scale, and that really kicks down the price a bunch. We're not going to compete with Genshin Impact, but you can go through this and then continue to apply filters until you find something that you like. Take those keywords, throw them into Keyword Inspector, and see if there's any opportunity. From there, use similar keywords in order to expand on that, and that's how I would go about it. Find a niche, zoom in, do your ASO research, build the app, then you have your day one ASO strategy. And I'm back. Okay, so let's see. What's next? I lost my mouse again. This is becoming a common occurrence. Does age of app on App Store factor into ranking at all? For example, an app that was published 10 years ago versus an app published a year ago. I used to think that it did, and I think at some point it did. But over the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen it not matter at all. I've seen apps that are 10 years old ranking above apps that are a week old. I've seen apps that are a week old ranking way above apps that are 10 years old. So it's really, again, going back to those ratings. And if you think about it from an Apple standpoint, from an algorithm standpoint, from a Google standpoint, it's really all about floating what they believe the users want. So an old app doesn't necessarily mean the users want it. If anything, it might be a little bit off. But in the case of something like my coloring book free, which I wrote about, I'll link to that too. It doesn't really matter. The app hasn't been updated in 7 years. It was launched 13 years ago, hasn't been updated in 7 years, and is the number one result because it's been getting all these downloads coming in through TikTok. So Apple really wants to elevate what they believe users would be able to enjoy and use more iPhones or use more Androids. That's at the end of the day what this is all about. All right, next. Edge is asking, thanks for answering my question. You're welcome. The biggest misconception in ASO has to be this belief that downloads and revenues contribute to rankings. We shall debunk this together. I hope so. I mean, if you've read any of my keyword teardowns, you will know that's the case. And hopefully you've read all of my keyword teardowns because they're really, really useful. Okay. Itai is asking, we are developing a mental wellness app. How can we optimize long-tail keywords? Oh boy. Mental wellness is such an interesting category. I wrote about it a bunch over the last year or so. It used to be super hot, like mega hot 2.5 years ago, 3-ish years ago, 2-ish years ago. And then it took a nosedive. And I think a lot of it has to do, it became so saturated that it's difficult to find any app that is not a brand. And so what I would do in a case like this, and this is a challenge more than just failure, is look for other things that people might be thinking about or looking for that could also, and those people could also use the mental wellness app. For example, I'm going to try and think of an example, but really I'm thinking of something like just targeting mental health or all the keywords that make sense. That's good and great, and you should definitely do that. And make sure you use more than one localization for that because you need all that space. But then look for other things that could be related. So I can't really think of any at the moment, but I will think of some later. But the idea is that find people as they need your app, but not look for your app. And you want those use cases and you want to target those too. And a good way to check for those before you optimize for them, if you don't want to wait, of course, for stuff to get caught by the algorithm, is to try it with Apple search ads. Throw just a little bit of money on a campaign that has kind of wild keywords or very tangential keywords and see what gets hits. Then bring those into ASO land, and then you don't have to pay Apple every time you want to get a view. That's kind of the idea. I think I have time for 2 more questions. Let's see. So Kutai is asking, do you think using ASO tools useful to generate new apps for serial indie developers? Let's say, oh, if yes, how? Absolutely. I think the idea of a serial indie developer is It's an interesting way of saying it, but it's really about solving problems. At the end of the day, if you have the ability to solve problems using apps, that's really how you would do it. And so if you don't have a problem that you need to solve, you need to find the problem. And one of the easiest ways to do this is, again, you can look at brand new apps that are being launched. One of the ways that I do this is I look at apps that have not been updated in a long time but are getting downloads. Again, using Explore, which I showed before. And I don't have time to show this now, but the idea is look for apps that have not been updated in a long enough time, maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago was their last update, and they're still getting thousands of downloads. Those are the apps you want to build because you're going to come out with one, a better ASO strategy for sure because they haven't been updated. They can't compete with you anymore. Two, you know that people want those and they continue to download it. We're not talking downloads from years ago. We're talking today's downloads. And then make sure that you build those. And another bonus thing is read the reviews. You'll see what people are complaining about. An app that hasn't been updated in 2 or 3 years is definitely going to have a bunch of complaints in the reviews. Read those and then make sure that you have those and you promote the fact that you have those. That's how I would go about it. Very easy way to get more, to kind of kickstart a portfolio of apps. Now, I know some people who do something very, very similar, but instead of building the apps, they go and acquire those apps because some of those people who haven't updated them in a long time, they just don't care anymore. And you can sometimes buy those for pretty cheap. So then you take them, you understand what the users want, you optimize them a little bit, and boom, you have a successful app. And I know people who build entire portfolios off of this, which is actually really cool. Really, really cool. If there's any of you here on the live stream, please talk to me after because I do want to feature someone who's done that successfully. I think that's a really cool strategy, especially today. Okay, last one. Itai is asking, when launching an app for the first time, what is the most important ASO factor? So again, keep in mind what I said before about that boost that you get from the algorithm on the App Store. For the first 7 days, I believe it's exactly 7, the App Store is going to autocomplete your app's name for keywords that are associated with your app. And so if you're building a mental wellness app and someone is looking for, let's say, meditation, and your app does that, and you use your keywords properly in the name or the subtitle or the keyword list, when someone starts typing meditation, the little pop-up will open or the little autocomplete, and your app's name, the full app's name, is going to be maybe the 4th or 5th result. That's huge because that means completely free discovery. All you have to do is make sure you have your keywords in place. And so that's super, super important, especially when launching a new app. I don't think it works for updates. So it's a one-time thing, a one-time gift from Apple. And I don't believe anything like this exists for Google, to my knowledge. So for Google, you still have to optimize the good old-fashioned way. All right, we did it. It's an hour in. I don't even know how many questions we answered, but hopefully I answered as many as I could. I wasn't really sure if this was going to be a thing that you like, but it kind of looks like you do. So I will have to do this again. This was also very simple, so I will gladly do it again over the next few months. I did not get to a lot of questions, I'm pretty sure. I don't even know how many. Maybe I'll try to answer some of these questions in the comments later on if I have time, or on Twitter. Ask me again if you follow me. But if not, come back next time and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. And for those of you who are celebrating, happy Thanksgiving. That's pretty much it for me. And thank you, Parth. I try to be the best. Alrighty. Take care, everyone. I will see you in the next one. Bye.